Can't hear you. Is it just me? I hear you, Carla.
Abraham, I can't hear you.
And I just noticed I'm saying that we weren't on the Zoom call, so maybe whenever I switched over again, it's cut off the speaker. You should be able to hear me now.
Yeah, it's good now. It's good.
Okay. So getting a better understanding of yourself and what is possible for you. And the truth is that anything is possible. You can have anything that you want. You are literally irreducible. Now, the self-image that you have is reducible. The beliefs that you have are reducible. You must be prepared to understand that everything that you've known in the past was a lie. It is. Or we can call it a demonstration. It's proof as long as you move into the idea. Everything you've known in the past is not accurate, but it is reducible. I remember reducing myself to being mediocre. I remember reducing myself to doing just enough. I remember reducing myself as a young man to doing things in a small way. Small ideas, small results. So the art of reduction is consciousness, and we can reduce ourselves in any manner we want. But the truth is, we're limitless. So that's why it's very important to understand the spiritual side of your nature and that it is perfect. And because you have perfection in you, you can cooperate with the highest degree of motivation. You can connect with the highest degree of stimuli. That's called your imagination. You can tap into this infinite field and you can literally change the way you think. You can change the level of intelligence you have. And that's why a lot of people get stuck. They don't think that they can change. They don't think they can release more power. They don't believe that they can become more intelligent. So this is a misrepresentation of ideas, but if we move into them, you will experience them, because consciousness and you becoming conscious of the ideas that you have is the integration of the environment you move into. Yesterday, I was talking about a fact and a facet and the difference between the two. There are no facts. They're all facets. Every fact that you will ever find, yes, it's a degree of motivation and it can be a degree of expression. But it, as well as the way it came in, will move out of time. Everything, this cup, this clothes, the way it moved in into reality will move out. The field and matter are always in a cooperative force of integrating, becoming something, and then becoming nothing again. Everything that moved down must go back up, and everything that is in a state of quantum is possible to come down. Somebody reverse engineered, they brought down the telephone. They brought down the internet. People have reduced down vehicles. People have reduced down flight. People have reduced down paintings. All of these are demonstrations of the connection between them and the field itself. So you can become more intelligent. The ideas that I used that changed me was a higher degree of intelligence. I didn't know that I had the ability to do things that I've done today. But as I accepted my birthright, I accepted a vision, I accepted creating things and building things. I also accepted the path of integration. And that's integrating myself. I must become the thing that I want. I had to learn. I had to unlearn myself. There's been so much I've had to unlearn. I've had to unlearn habits, behaviors. I had to unlearn beliefs about myself. I literally had to change my self-image. I've literally had to keep reprogramming myself to become the person that I am today. And that's what I'm inviting you to do. I can go back today and go find people that resisted change themselves. They resisted the changes. They resisted, they wanted a better life. They want more things. They want more money, but they're not willing to change themselves. But that's the whole key. If you're not willing to change yourself, you've got to go back to what you are. So the key to this is that you and you and you and everyone that's you are limitless. But you have to decide that you're going to change who you are. Because the person that created the results today cannot reap the benefits that you want tomorrow. You can only reap what you have. Because that's what you know. If you're not willing to express your consciousness in a different behavior, if you're not willing to express a different idea, no one can make you a winner. And if somebody makes you a winner, it's only temporary because it wasn't you. You have to develop yourself to become the winner, with whatever that means. We're always winning. The average individual is just winning more of the same ideas that they have, more winning, more bills, winning more mediocre life. We're always winning. Winning is the extension of consciousness. Winning is another day. Winning is continuing to breathe. You're winning. You're gaining more what? Oxygen. You're gaining more breath. You're gaining more life. We're always in a state of gaining, receiving, and gaining. The question is, are you gaining more of the results that you don't want? Change. This golden rule, lesson 15, moves into honesty, love for humanity, willingness to forgive, knowledge of the natural laws. Very important. Recognition of interdependency of men. And this will be very well put in because we just finished up cooperation. You're going to see the cooperative forces in all things. When we're going over cooperation, it's always a united front that we're moving into, between a spiritual consciousness to an environmental ideas to the results that we see. Recognition of interdependency of men. By this term is meant that the existing system of social integration renders all men dependent upon one another. That absolute independence is not only impossible to realize, but inconsistent with the best interest of mankind. From this fact, the conclusion may be readily drawn that it is expedient to apply the golden rule in all of our transactions with our fellow man. Recognition of the interdependency of men leads to recognition of the soundness of the golden rule and of advantages accruing to all who make it the basis of their relationship with others. In this lesson, you have had a brief outline of the subjects and factors of which this course is composed. Analysis of these subjects will lead one to the unavoidable conclusion that cooperation, concentration, and coordination are essential factors in the attainment of power. Let us now proceed to illustrate how the power that may be developed through the aid of the 15 major factors of this course may be applied in the practical affairs of life. Let us determine also whether all of these 15 factors are essential in the practical affairs of life. As an example with which to test the merits of these 15 factors, let us take the subject of salesmanship, which is the subject of a practically universal nature. To sell either commodities or service, the salesman must have a definite purpose in mind, as well a definite plan for the attainment of the object of that purpose. The successful salesman must have self-confidence. Without this quality, he is defeated before he begins. Without this quality, he not only recognizes the limitations and objections behind which his prospect buyer may take refuge, but he actually creates these obstacles in his own mind. The successful salesman must take the initiative and possess the ability of leadership in order that he may find prospective purchasers of his wares and dominate the negotiations until the sale has been made. The successful salesman must have imagination sufficient to enable him to paint a clear, attractive picture of his services in mind of this prospective purchase. What will they receive? What will they gain? What are the benefits? What will they acquire? What will they experience? When we learn to talk to the subconscious mind, we learn that the subconscious mind is always looking for expression. Not only yours, everyone else's. When you're going to talk to an individual, you must speak to their heart. And their heart is emotional. Everyone's heart is emotional. We're here because we want to experience reality. We're here because we want to experience life. We want to smell a rose. We want to touch the sand, touch the ocean, touch the water. The ability to caress a face, male or female. The ability to kiss, the ability to love, the ability to experience life, a child being born. All of these things are connections to the emotional part of the brain, which is your right brain, creativity. You want to experience water, heat. Let's go to the sentient consciousness that rules the way we behave. The minute you're missing the things that are necessities, immediately your imagination turned on. Your mind is looking towards how can I survive, right? So when we look at the different layers of consciousness, we find that every layer has its needs. What are your needs today? What is it that you want? What is it that you may need? What is it that you want? So here comes need is the basis of foundation. You're immediately turned on and you're ready to take action when your survival is not being taken care of, when your needs are not being met. You're going to turn on and I need to go to work. Oh, I need to do this. Oh, I need to take action. All of a sudden, the sentient part of your consciousness, the hardwired part of humanity is turned on to action. I must take action. There comes a point in time where the individual has satisfied his needs and their spiritual consciousness starts to say, you're more than how you're behaving. We could have more. We want more. So we're going from a personal need, necessities, to spiritual wants. And you start to dream. You start to imagine. You start to think beyond the conditions, circumstances that you have. So here's the integration between needing and wanting. Needing, wanting, desire. When did you stop? Where did you stop wanting more for your life? When have you given in? And you're going to find that at some point, you've given in to what you know because you don't know how to go beyond what you know. That was it. What was the invisible thing that stopped you? You did not know more than what you know. And here's that cooperative force. Who stopped you from investing in yourself? Who stopped you from developing yourself? You don't even know. The things that stops an individual from going beyond what they know is the fact that there's nothing in the subconscious to go beyond what they know. They weren't programmed to have anymore. When I found out that my limitations were that I didn't know any more than what I knew. When I found out that there was a mental program inside of me, then when it has gone as far as what it knew, it was resisting change. When I found out that there was a governing factor inside of me, that the minute I go beyond the belief systems of what this body was programmed to have, the minute I found out that that is deciding what I will have in the future, I said, oh no, I will take control of this. And if I wouldn't have, I would have given in to what I was. There's so many times that I had to change, cause my body to act and behave as it didn't want to. And even several times getting no's, several times looking like I was wasting my time and that it wasn't possible for me. But I literally had to make a decision. Will I continue to let this belief control my behavior? Would I literally let what I know control who I'm going to become and what I will experience in life? Because I'm not the only one that's facing this. Everyone does. And many times we try things and we have a folly. I don't like the word failure. It's a folly. Because the law is not with us. It's with the program. The law is not with us. It's with the programming. And that's why it's so important to go beyond the laws that you were programmed. Because if you don't know how to change, that control mechanism controls your behavior. And send me a message. I want you guys to take the test on yourselves. How many times have you let disbelief? How many times have you let not knowing control your behavior? Send me a message. How many times have you let somebody else tell you or talk you out of changing? Changing a position, changing jobs, building your own company. How many times have you let something outside of you stop you from becoming the person you want to be? And I know that everyone eventually gets to the position where this is going to happen, if it hasn't already happened. And you conform. The truth is, what I do is not normal. What I continue to do is not normal. What I've done is not normal. Changing who you are is not normal. And that's why everybody more or less stays within the realms of what they know. Thoughts, takeaways. Any thoughts, takeaways? Here we're talking about a salesman, and that how the salesman must be able to lead himself, must be able to take initiative, must be able to have self-confidence in himself, and not let his own mindset control his behavior, create obstacles in his own mindset, and put things in his own way. A child is selling. A child learns sales. Everybody is a salesman. They're not aware. You sell your way into an industry. You sell your way into eating as a child. How many times would the child yell and scream? Because it found out when it does that, it grabs its attention of the mother or the father. Everybody's always selling. Selling of an idea, You sell yourself an idea. You move yourself into positions growing up. You move yourself into a position as a child. I would like to have. Why would you like to have that? When do you want to have that? What would you like to have? I want this for Christmas. I want this for my birthday. You're selling. We're always selling. How many times have you used your own mind to stop you from moving into a direction that you truly want to experience? The salesman must take initiative and possess the ability of leadership in order that he may find prospective purchases of his services and dominate the negotiations until the sale has been made. The successful salesman must have the imagination sufficient to enable him to paint a clear, attractive picture of his services to the mind of his prospect purchaser. And here we go again. We're going back from the mind, the individual that he's talking to, and himself. The successful salesman must be enthusiastic about the merits of his services before he can arouse interest in the mind of the prospect's purchasers and purchases. The successful salesman must have self-control, or he will lose the offensive and find himself negotiating on the defensive side of the transaction. The successful salesman must be willing to do more than he is paid for, dependent on the law of averages to bring him satisfactory returns for all of his efforts. The successful salesman must have an attractive personality, and especially so if he is selling services in connection with which there is keen competition. The successful salesman must have the ability to think accurately, as his arguments must be founded upon sound logic, and he must have the ability to sense from the prospect's purchasers' conduct the exact effect of his arguments. The successful salesman must concentrate his mind and all of his affairs and efforts on the subject at hand until the sale has been completed. A wandering mind never closed a sale. The successful salesman must convince the prospect purchaser of his desire to cooperate to their mutual advantage. The successful salesman must take frequent inventory of his efforts and profit by his follies. Again, I don't use the word failures, it's a folly. It's a demonstration of conscience. If you don't like it, you go back to the drawing board. Where's the drawing board? It's in your imagination. It's the way you think. No sale has ever been lost without adding to the salesman's storehouse of knowledge something that would be of subsequent aid to him. I remember many times as I began sales, which I'd never sold before, that I always had to think in advance. I always had to think about the individual that I was wanting to work with, wanting to create a service with. My job was always to think ahead of time, what is it that they desired, so that I can position myself to offer that service. So here goes again, this cooperative force must move advance of anyone that has gone before. And the more that I can move in advance of anyone that has gone before, I can see things that have not been seen. And I can adapt to the changes that need to be made within me, within them, and the scenario that I'm working towards. And it's all imaginative. I remember creating the first company, the business that I was going to do. I had to advance decision making. I had to imagine what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. And everything was imagined. I imagined the whole thing. Did I had to learn how to communicate? Yes. But I had to imagine what I would serve, the way I would serve, how I was going to go beyond anyone else in the way they were serving. And how could I accommodate making things more lucrative, more opportunistic for him and me? How could I encourage them and also serve them better than the service that they were receiving before? So everything was totally creative, imagined. And I built the model in that arrangement. And anything I ever did directly, the outcome was success. The success was, we may look at it as something physical, but the most successful part wasn't the result, it wasn't the money, it wasn't the transaction. The success was developing me into the person that I wanted to be. Winning. For me, that was winning. Winning was going beyond myself, developing myself beyond what I was, successfully changing my way of thinking, my way of acting, and ultimately re-educating my mind and body to act and behave as it would have never have behaved. That was success. Because I know that in any endeavor today, I could land wherever I land. I could start all over wherever I want. I could move to a foreign country with no money. And I know that I could, in a matter of months, acquire and have a multi-million-dollar company operating. Because the success was not about the acquisition of things, the acquisition of money. Success was the integration of the information that I had to learn and become so that I can recreate what I want to see. Success was changing me. Success was me not having to go back to what I was. The vision of a vision that's going to change your life. The vision of creating your own company. The vision of helping more people in the company you're in. These visions that are taking you beyond what you know, it's what leads to success when you apply it. And again, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the results. It was the results of the efforts. It's about changing yourself and re-educating yourself in a manner that you can reproduce the results again, independently of anybody else's action. That's success. I see that we're close to our time. Any thoughts, takeaways? Well, nope, today's our Tuesday. We're going all the way. We still have about another 25 minutes. Thoughts, takeaways, questions?
So my question to you, Abraham, is let's say, hypothetically speaking, you're stripped of everything that you would have acquired and built over the years, and you're now beckoned to start back in an environment that you're not familiar with. Which would you amplify strategy equally as mindset, or will you fixate your focus more on your mindset?
It's always going to be both. It's integrated. Anytime you're going to do something beyond what you know, you're changing yourself. If you take on a different endeavor, you change yourself. So right now I'm in the process of changing the businesses that I've done. In the last 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, I've been working my way out of the businesses, and they're having to change. And change is always good. Now, the models I built before really wasn't about building companies, and it wasn't about the money. It was about the learning that I would have to adapt to and become, and all the comprehension of the way things work and the way we work as humanity. But yes, if I were to start right now to do something, I would do things more directly in the path that I'm wanting to go. And it wouldn't be just about the money. It would be about fulfillment. Fulfillment and money. Money is a result. And we can earn money in many different manners. Maybe to begin with, I would start some, just depending on the scenario that I'm in, right? That would be dictate the manner that I go about earning money and how fast and what I need to earn to position me in what I want to do. But yes, it would be more inclined to more of my direct purpose, personal desire, and helping people. And it would always be in a larger way, yes, because the goal that you set dictates what you experience. If I decided to earn more money and it's a small amount of money, I'll never get what I want, because the degree of which I do it's going to be small.
%100%.
Yep. Any idea that you start off with, and if the idea is small, the results will be small. We attract what we're thinking, and I wouldn't want to attract small results. I wouldn't want to attract small money. I wouldn't want to attract servicing a smaller group of people. So through the years, I had larger goals, and those goals were always, and there's always larger than what I'm saying. But at the time, my focus has been to do multi-million-dollar companies monthly, doing over 8 figures. And those goals have landed a results, but also led to larger movement, larger models, larger movement, and then we have to learn how to adapt to that. And it's about the adaptation. So the same thing in moving into anything else, any other endeavor. It would, how many people do I want to impact? That dictates the results. Any other questions? Let's integrate this with you as a phenomena. You as a phenomena. The laws that make you happen. Right now we're talking about salesmanship, and this golden rule. And we're illustrating these different attributes of consciousness as it moves out of itself, the way to integrate them, to become something, to become someone, to have something, to experience somebody, somewhere, sometime. It's very important to understand the golden rule of honesty, love for humanity, willingness to forgive, knowledge of the natural laws. Thank you. And learning how to move out into the world with these. When you can learn how to move out into the world with these attributes, one, you've got to know what they mean. How do you experience them? How do you experience love for humanity? How would you experience willingness to change? How would you experience willingness to forgive yourself? How would you experience willingness to forgive others? How would you experience recognition of interdependency? and forgiving yourself for the ideas of using the past. How would you experience being honest with yourself and being honest with others? Every one of these words is not just a word. It's a way to move out into the world and experience that word. You as a phenomena. You that makes you what you are. And here we get into installing a new way of thinking about you. The laws that make you happen are governed by natural laws. The law that makes you happen is consciousness. And you became conscious. The law that makes you happen is breath. Move the breath through your body. The law that makes you happen vivifies you, awakens you, opens your eyes, opens your ears. Taste, touch, smell, opens your awareness. The law that makes you happen is always here. The law that makes you happen is always for greater truth, more awareness, more understanding. The law that makes you who you are is always looking to identify with the thing so that it can experience the thing. As a little child, you came into the world and we opened up the senses. You came into the world and you began to see the scene of reality. The scene of the reality moved into the seer. You began to see. So the scene of the reality moved into the seer. And then you began to imagine with those ideas and think of those ideas. The law that makes you happen is always integrating words, integrating actions, integrating belief systems, integrating everything you was being told. The law that makes you happen moves out of those ideas and expresses them in behavior. This law that's always making you happen is who you think you are at the moment. Is it a fact or is it a facet? It's only a fact as long as you continue to demonstrate that idea. The minute you change the idea, the facts change. The results change. I remember expressing the idea of being a tire man. I remember expressing the idea of, they call it chopping cotton or cutting weeds around the cotton fields. I remember expressing that idea because that's what I was exposed to, earn money. So I remember as a young man, 10, 11, 12, 13, going into the summer and getting up at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning and cutting weeds for farmers around the cotton fields. And I remember moving out of my consciousness and experiencing that with my hands, my feet, the clothes I was wearing, the days, the hours of experiencing that image from someone else. Where did I receive the image? Why did I go and experience that? Well, according to the people I was surrounded with and the way they earn money, that was the idea of earning money. And I went and experienced that phenomena. You as a phenomena. The law that makes you happen. Now let's look at the law that makes me happen. Spiritual being experiencing a physical reality. The law that makes me happen is spirit. Spirit integrates with the ideas. It's always looking for ideas to move out of itself. I wanted money. I wanted money. So then I started to ask the family how to earn money. Well, I don't know. And they came up with the idea, well, I know people at the church and this is what they do. This is what you could do. So here I'm off to experience that reality. And I must go through that phenomena called thinking, image making process, putting images together. So here comes the processing of how consciousness handles information. The phenomena called life, the phenomena called vital life force, is now processing and handling information. And then here comes the body right along with it to experience that information. Now, at some point later on, the farmer saw something in me that he didn't see in others. Years down the road, I remember the farmer coming and finding me. Even though the family had been working there for many years, and the family were all chopping cotton, he found me and asked me if I would like to drive the tractor. So they moved me out of that position, and I'm driving the tractor. Now I'm driving the tractor, and I'm doing in a different position where it's less labor, and then earning more money. And the family was doing this before I was there. What moved me out of that position? I wanted more. You don't get a thing unless you want more. The simple thought of wanting to be more and thinking about more. And I remember watching men on the tractor at a distance. And it was some months later. I said, what would it be like to drive the tractor? And I looked at the hoe I had and doing the work I was doing. And then I went off to continue my work. Weeks later, the farmer comes and offers me a different position. What pulled me out of that position? Desire. I set that intention out. And here I'm off to move into a different position. The simple act of wanting and desiring, image making process. So we're talking about the phenomena called view. This phenomena, which is spiritually connected with all things at the same time, began to desire beyond what it was seeing, beyond what it was experiencing. But it was experiencing somebody else's imagination. But even though it was experiencing the ideas they gave me, I was still experiencing my body. I had calluses on my hand. I was a young man, and I was experiencing that reality. But as I began to imagine and see, I began to see a different expression of consciousness, that phenomena called consciousness. I'm watching my consciousness. I'm watching the people that I'm surrounded with and their consciousness. And now I am looking at somebody else's consciousness, experiencing a different reality. And why am I here? And me thinking I would rather be there. Weeks later, they give me opportunity, and I go and I move into that position. Processing information. Look at that. Our ability to process information. Now, the simple act of thinking, I want that, I can see that, I want that, I want to experience that. And then the position, the opportunities, they come in, taking them. I didn't know how to drive a tractor, never drove a tractor. He asked me, have you ever drove a tractor? Never drove a tractor. You know what a tractor is? Nope, but if you show me one time, I'll learn how to do it. That's what I said. And I've always had that habit. If you show me once, you'll never have to show me twice. And that's what I said, and that's what he did. And that's what I did. I never even drove a car. I'm driving a tractor. He taught me how to drive a tractor. Young man driving a tractor. And I was over there mixing fertilizer. Later on, I desire more. Even though there were small increments, but what I was doing as a young man was learning to move out of my imagination, processing information, desiring more what I see. And then the willingness to act. The willingness to let go of the hope. The willingness to let go of what I have for something greater. Now here this is the swiveling of consciousness, awakening and looking beyond what it sees, and then being able to see itself be someone else, and then taking the action in that direction. And I remember later on becoming a tire man and doing these things, and I remember my consciousness swiveling around and saying I'm more and wanting to have more, but then I didn't understand at the moment, but it was being afraid to change what I do. Later on, that swiveling of consciousness, swiveling consciousness is seeing yourself beyond what you're doing. Can you see yourself do something beyond what you do? And then can you cause your body to act and behave as it would have never have behaved? Until it learns and adapts to the change. These simple steps that I'm talking about is how I've changed realities over times. Can you see yourself doing something beyond what you know? Are you willing to learn what you have to learn to adapt to the changes that you have to become? You have to become them. Why? Because if your body's not programmed to experience that, to have that, to do that, you resist change. The body resists being changed. And if you're resisting the change and you're resisting change in yourself and you don't want to go beyond the self, this is where the program or the belief system themselves take hold. They control you, control your behavior, and ultimately control the rest of your life. So these techniques, I'm talking about swiveling, you swivel consciousness. Can you see yourself beyond what you do? And if you can see yourself doing something beyond, or if you want to do something beyond what you do, what is it? And if you can begin to desire beyond what you do, and then decide what you want to do beyond what you know, do you have enough awareness to know that you're going to create mistakes? You're going to have follies. Do you have enough awareness to know that at first the body is going to resist the change? The program resists being changed. Do you have enough awareness to know that your own mind will tell you you're not good enough? This is not who you are. You're never going to become what you want in this manner. Do you have enough awareness that that is not you that's talking? And you'll literally argue with yourself, and you'll literally talk yourself out of changing yourself. Do you have enough awareness to know when it's not you that's talking to you? This phenomenon called you. There's many parts of the human personality. And this is the law that makes you happen every day. And this law that's making you happen every day is normally choosing what you do and who you become every day. You're going to literally have to go beyond those mental words, that mental talk, that self-talk, and tell it to silence down and move to the side. You're in control. And you're going to be willing to adapt to the changes that you need to make to experience something new. Now, there's several times that I move my body into things that I just wanted to do because I wanted to do them, but it really wasn't my desire. But in doing that as well, I was learning to control the flow of consciousness. I was learning how to silence down the program. Did I learn that later on I really didn't want the thing that I went after? Yep. Did I learn later on that it wasn't something I really wanted? Yes. But I was also learning that there is a chattering mind that's always controlling the behavior. Did I learn that anything is possible? Yes, I did. I started to learn that as I'm willing to adapt and learn to become something, I can literally change. all these lessons that I took on was learning to go beyond the program. Any lessons you haven't learned to go beyond yourself, resisted change, changing yourself, all you did was you succumbed back to what you know. Can you still change it? Oh yeah. And if you want to change yourself, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. You're going to have to go back to you. This is not about anyone else. It's not about me. It's not about him or her. This is about you. There's mental programs inside of you. And if you're not willing to go back and change yourself in those areas, the field, consciousness, will find a different way to change itself through a different manner again. Every lesson you're not willing to grow through, you will find it in a different job. You'll find it in a different relationship. You will find it in a different manner. Why? Because consciousness is always looking for ways to go beyond itself. And everything you don't learn, you repeat the lesson. You repeat living the way you're living. You're going to repeat doing the things you're doing. You're going to repeat experiencing things that you don't want. Thoughts, takeaways?
That's a very nice consolidation you've done with your vocabulary, my dear friend. Very, very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I can see your growth. Very, very beautiful. Very nice. Very, very nice. And when I hear you say, I immediately you've stimulated in me again what I do. You're making distinctions. Damn, I just a distinction that I saw in what you were talking about is this the difference between and look, what you just said is so well consolidated that the logic that connects your words is so well structured now that it connected me directly to my own work, you know, and when we come to this level of looking into things, I don't want to use the word analyzing. If we're not, we're doing something different than analyzing. But we get into such a depth, you know, and describing, in this case, yourself, wanting to describe everybody else as well. Words become extremely a problem, if I may. What I mean by that is a difficulty, if I may, a challenge. That's a better word. They become a challenge, an enormous challenge that you have to be very, very mindful as you think and as you speak of the words you're using to describe yourself, because otherwise, if you don't do that, you'll be unfair with yourself. You will be unfair with yourself. You won't be able to describe yourself correctly, and you can get stuck. You can remain stuck in something just because of that, the lack of adequate precision in the use of those words. And the words I have in mind right now is the difference between identification and adaptation. They are not the same thing. They don't entail the same thing. They're very different mechanisms. Both exist. We both do. We do both. But there's a difference between identification and adaptation. Identification implies that either first you saw a vision and then you converted the information in your vision, you converted it into the language that speaks in your chattering mind. And the language that speaks and talks in your chattering mind, that language in your chattering mind is made out of images, ideas, concepts, and notions. They're called representational vehicles, those four. Images, ideas, concepts, and notions. That is what the information in your vision will be reduced when it enters the chattering mind. The vision carries information that the chattering mind will generate an image of it. The chattering mind will generate, out of the information present in your vision, will generate an idea, will generate a concept, will generate a notion. That's the service the chattering mind gives us, where we can become aware of the information that was present in the vision. The vision does not organize itself in the chattering mind. It organizes itself in the heart of the mind. That's where it arises from. Only in the heart of the mind. Okay, and the information associated with the vision you have, okay, it contains many components. Among them, there's direction and action. Those are components that belong to the fountainhead from where vision arises inside of us. But then all that stuff enters the chattering mind because it is being reduced more and more until it gets to the brain and then becomes behavior. And then what you say as well. But when it enters the chattering mind, there, all the information about action, about direction, about urgency, stuff like that present in your vision is transformed into four representation of vehicles. It acquires an image, it acquires an idea, it acquires a concept, it acquires a notion. That's part of the whole process, no? That happens inside the human mind. Now, when we are there in the chattering mind, look at this. The difference between an image and an idea and a concept and a notion, they're very different. They do different things, okay? But just let me stop at one of them, the idea. That is very important, okay?
You got like 2 minutes, Ricardo?
Okay.
14.
Okay, I'll say it fast. So the idea is a representation of vehicle that shows you the possibilities to which anything present in the image can change, or anything present in a concept can change. Okay, that's an idea. It shows you how something can change. Therefore, it shows you possibilities. Okay, but you, the observer in between the vision and what happens in the chattering mind, you, the observer, okay, you can identify yourself with the idea, and you will identify yourself with an idea. Okay, that's what identification is all about, and we need to do that. We have to. That's just the way things work. But on the other hand, something completely different is what you have to do to adapt to your circumstances. And that's different from identification. You see, especially when you identify with an idea that is aligned with your vision. You see, a vision contains a component called desire. And desire is information that shows you that you are more than what you became. You see, but when that comes in contact with an idea, see, the idea that shows possibilities, and now in this case, possibilities about yourself, you will identify yourself with that, especially if that is aligned with with your desire. See, you see, it's very subtle stuff. But beyond identification, you got adaptation. It's an entirely different monster, completely different mechanism, as you see it. But you see, but the mechanisms are so freakingly subtle, man. You see? That if you're not careful and you lose sight of the precision that allows you clarity, you will mess yourself up by using words as if they were synonyms, and they are not. And that way, I would say, that's what makes you unfair with yourself. You see? It will feed an unfair conversation with yourself. And it will get you into trouble. Like I was watching yesterday, I was watching SWAT. You know, and there's a particular scene, you know, where one of the SWAT leaders says to his wife, "Okay, I've chosen the church I want to christen my daughter with, because the woman is pregnant." The woman turns around and says, "Christening? What do you mean?" "Yeah, we're going to christen my child." "No, I don't think so," he says. "The other day we mentioned it." "Yeah," he says, "we mentioned it, but we never talked about it actually." You know, so they get into trouble. There's a friction there, no? He goes to work as a SWAT guy with that friction in his mind. And then he goes to a buddy of his in the SWAT thing, and he says, how did you do it with your wife? Because this guy has four kids, his friend, no? And he's just about to get just his first kid. No? How did you handle such an issue? And then he used something. He used two words, okay? That because he did not discern them, he did not distinguish between them, he is in trouble. Unnecessary. But he doesn't know the difference. And of course, the guy who wrote the script doesn't know the difference either. He said, religious, being religious, and being spiritual. And he used those two words as synonyms. And they are not at all. If he would have known how to make that distinction, he wouldn't gotten into trouble in his mind. He wouldn't at all. But because he did not know to make the distinction, he used one word, religious, as being spiritual, and being spiritual as being religious, he got into trouble in his own mind. You see what I'm saying? Okay, now that's an example of on the one hand, not making distinctions, and then thinking that the lack of distinction is what describes best the reality, and it is not. It never, ever, ever. See, that's one of the characteristics of the chattering mind. It allows for distinctions to come up so that you can see reality or create reality with precision. Because the distinction makes visible that which was invisible.
Which you could not see before.
Yeah. And therefore you become aware. And if you're not aware of something, how can you change it?
Yeah, you won't.
You can't. And adaptation is different from identification. Adaptation implies what your brain, look, not you, what your brain, but that feeds back on your mind. Yes, it does. But I won't talk about that right now. It's too subtle, too complex, and I don't have time. What your brain had to do to survive your circumstances. If your circumstances were purely opportunity, and they gave you opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, then what you do to survive that is you learn to live. You don't have to learn to survive. You learn to live. You learn to respond. You learn to propose. You see? Because people are not a threat to you. Your father, your mother, your siblings, the principal of school, they're not a threat to you. You see? So you can learn to live. You have the opportunity to do that. You're not living in a concentration camp. But if you live in a concentration camp, and everything around you is a threat, no matter in which circumstance, in which context, in which place you are, everything is a freaking threat, then the brain will have to do something about it. That's called adaptation. That happens in the brain. But it will condition what happens to the observer as well. You see? So there are three states of adaptation. That happens in the brain. Three states. It's not the first one, because the first one, everything was an opportunity, so no problem. You have to learn to live there. But in the other three, no, you have to learn to survive. You must learn to survive. You see, that's the type of adaptation I'm talking about here. I'm referring to that. And what are they? Well, when there's a threat outside and your brain detects a threat, it will immediately have to do either of three things in order to adapt to the threat. Because there's no other choice, because no opportunity beyond the threat. No opportunity whatsoever. So what does it do? It will do three things. If you are being mistreated, which is how a threat appears, right? Then the brain will learn to mistreat others in order to survive. If you're being mistreated, the brain will learn to mistreat itself to survive. And if you're being mistreated, the brain will learn to allow the person to keep on mistreating you in order to survive. There are three. So if you learn to mistreat others, you're becoming a tyrant. If you learn to allow others to keep on mistreating you in order to survive, you're becoming a victim. Literally. And if you learn to mistreat yourself in order to survive, you are becoming a savior. Literally. Of other people. Always in relation to other people. A victim in relation to other people. A tyrant in relation to other people. You see. But you can also become a savior, a tyrant, and a victim in relation how to think about yourself. The way you think about you also makes you a tyrant, a victim, or a savior. Because the brain can't distinguish. It will not distinguish the difference between a stimulus that originates in the environment versus the stimulus that originates in your mind. It can't make the difference. It doesn't. It will just process the stimulus, no matter where it comes from. You see? That is how you have to adapt. That's not an identification. That is a pure adaptation. You didn't adapt to an idea that gave you possibilities. There are no possibilities there in the adaptation process. You just have to survive by learning to mistreat others, by learning to mistreat yourself, or by learning to allow others to keep on mistreating you. You see what I'm saying? And that's pure wiring. That's pure wiring that corresponds to a way of thinking and feeling in your mind. And what happened to the observer when you became either a tyrant or the other two? Yeah, something else happens, but yeah, we can talk about it. I don't have no time. You see what I'm saying? So that's the distinction between adaptation, the way the way I'm talking about it right now, okay, versus identification. You see?
If you would keep this position where we're at and like we're at, so we can pick it up tomorrow.
Sure. And we are made up of both. We are made of both of them, man. So now that we want to go into beyond personal development, we want to go into spiritual development, then you've got to learn the following thing. If you learned to survive your circumstances, to be a tyrant, if you learn to mistreat others, you have to stop doing that. And you have to catch yourself as you're doing it. Ha! You see, that's the trick of it. If you learn to be a victim, to allow others to keep on mistreating you, and you want to go into spiritual development, you have to catch yourself while you're being a victim and stop doing that. Stop allowing people to mistreat you. You see what I'm saying? And if you learn to mistreat yourself, and you want to go into spiritual development, you have to stop and catch yourself doing that. Stop being a savior. That's the job. Now, who wants to do that one? It is very difficult, and it is very painful.
And not only that, just understand the psychology behind your belief and behavior behind
Indeed, sir.
mechanisms that made you who you are.
Yep.
It's going to literally control your reality for the rest of your life if you don't learn who you are and the way you operate. And that's why these classes are so important. They allow you to break free from the prison that you don't even know you're in. We're at our time. Thank you guys that are watching this. We're going to be moving into our meditation. And again, you guys want to learn more about this and get into a class that's going to help you develop yourself and change the current reality that you're living in. Get involved. Send us a message. Subscribe. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you. And we'll continue on to our intervention technique.
Okay, you be doing intervention, or you want to do TM now? What do you want to do?
Sorry, the TM.
TM? Okay.
We've got, really, we only have...
Yes, tell me. 12
minutes now. I don't know if you guys have questions you want to talk, but we don't have enough time to continue this.
Okay. You guys, you wanna talk? You wanna ask questions? Raise doubts? Make contributions during these 12 minutes? You can meditate on your own later on. Any questions, please? Comments?
It feels that in every class, it's bringing up so many different aspects of myself and perhaps everybody else. But it's like you see yourself kind of changing, and it's an amazing thing to see and feel. Also, I feel, you feel supported in making new decisions for yourself. So I really value all of these classes together day after day. It's really a beautiful thing. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, yes. To me, yes. I also thank you for being able not only to listen, but to be able to assimilate what is being said. That's very important for your life, to assimilate it, because you actually discover yourself in the words that are being said. You see, and when that happens, it's called epiphany. Aha! Oh my God! Yeah, but inside of you, you begin to talk to yourself that way. Oh my goodness! No wonder when I was with my mother, taka taka taka, no, and when I went with my brother, taka taka taka, whatever, no. You assimilated, and as you assimilated, in the very act of assimilating, you have actually activated a mechanism. Literally.
Yes, I actually feel like a lot of these notions and ideas and concepts that, you already have it, you already know it inside, but to really keep hearing it over and over in different ways and bringing in different aspects of it is like really, just making it easier for you to integrate it then into your own life and make decisions.
Yeah, yeah. Look what happened, for example, with Tesla or Edison. They brought different ways of generating electricity, but not only that, they generated a new industry of all kinds of industries. You know, from the little things you plug into the plugs themselves. There were no plugs before. Somebody had to make them, to produce them. At first by hand, and then it became less not in. It wasn't manual anymore. It became later. It was manufactured automated, and they made thousands and millions per hour. You know, of plugs, just plugs. Or the industry of making the wire cable, the cables with the plastic in it, the insulator. You see what I'm saying? And the thing you put on the wall where you put a plug on. You know, there was no such things. These are industries that came as a consequence of somebody's vision, and he brought it into the world. Tesla and Edison did that, for example, there, no? The same with Steve Jobs. He opened up new industries, man. Jesus. And therefore gave jobs to a bunch of people. The same with what we're doing, exactly the same thing. We are showing you different distinctions. We're showing you the fountainheads from which those distinctions come from. We're showing you what they do in yourself, and you actually say, "Oh my God, yeah! Look at this! I just saw this, and I feel much more relieved. Oh, look, I saw something I never saw before. It was always there, but I never saw it." Because the distinction makes visible that which was invisible, and now you can be aware. So what happens? It is creating a new industry. Because there will be people later on that will be in charge of just working with identification, so you learn to unidentify yourself. Change your identifications. That's a new industry. People will completely be specialized in that kind of thing. You see? Or what that happens when you identify, what happens to the wiring in the brain. There will be other people who will be in charge of unwiring you with the intervention from the outside. So we're generating the basis for new industries here.
It's really funny that it's easier obviously to see the changes in other people. So my daughter, I bring her up once in a while. So she finally decided through conversation that, you know, just that we're having, I know that I'm energetically, we're tied still in through the umbilical cord energetically, that now she decided she wanted to be a writer. And then after that, she decided she wanted to do something else. And then afterwards, she decided, no, I'm going to be a librarian. And now she's building the idea of how to be a librarian, figuring it out, you know, finding out what courses she has to take at university. And now she's gone another step forward to try and support herself in this vision. She's like, I'm going to have, what do you call it? When you choose specific books, and so you're catering, or you're I can't remember the word. Anyways, you're creating your own library. You're specifically choosing your own library, and then she's like, I'm going to sell these books, curating my own online bookstore,
Okay.
to put it out there. So she's building herself, and I know it's because of our conversations that we're having, and what I'm learning from you guys is just being passed to my children. So it's easier to see it in someone else, obviously, than seeing it in yourself. And it's, I think, even within yourself, there's maybe more fear because you're doing it. But when you see somebody else doing it, you can be like their cheerleader. So it's really amazing.
How old is your daughter who's doing this?
She's 23.
How about that? Okay.
Yeah.
And
So,
since when has she been after this definition of what she wants to do with her life? Since when?
well, I really saw like she was having difficulty since she was like 14, 14, 15, all the way through, always kind of like having difficulties in school or with friends and not being able to identify herself, versus my son was easier for him. My daughter was
She,
always more difficult.
okay, as you can see, for example, now I spoke about adaptation versus identification.
Hmm.
All that is applicable to her completely.
Yeah, of
And,
course.
and there's a third component working here is a process called individuation.
Hmm.
And she's in the middle of the whole thing. Individuation is a very important word because it is a very important concept, which is a very important mechanism of us humans. Individuation does not happen in a chattering mind. In your generating mind, you got socialization going on and identification. Whereas in the heart of the mind, no, you got individuation going on. And it is very interesting process, very powerful process. And it has two halves, like a coin that has two sides, no, inverse, reverse. The same thing with individuation, it has two sides to it. On the one hand, is that being revealed, the revelation being revealed of what are the resources of the individual. What are the resources the individual is endowed with? Is finding out about that. Is a deployment of those resources, and you finding out, being conscious about yourself around those resources being deployed. You see, so then when every resource is being deployed, that would generate an idea of you at the possibilities about yourself. And then you want to try it out. And then you engage in certain activities by which you will be cultivating those resources that are coming out because you become aware of them now. You see, so those are the deployment of the resources of the individual, so that the individual can become aware of those resources as they're being deployed. You see, and if you do not have the opportunity to listen to those, to find out what they are at the moment they are appearing, because they won't say to you, hey, I'm coming out, I'm going to show you what resource you're made of. They don't announce themselves. They just happen. And if you missed the train, you missed the train. And then you can pick it up later on. But at the very moment it happened for the first time, oftentimes you just miss it. And probably she's been missing it since she was 14 years old.
But it's interesting to watch, and then now going from saying, okay, I'm going to be a librarian, to then going say, well, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And so
Okay.
now choosing the books, and then even within the choosing the books, I'm like, okay, so just trying to guide her a little bit, say, what do you want to specialize in when you choose your books? Because you're choosing anything, right? You're just choosing something anything and everything. I'm like, okay, that's great. But now where is your specialization?
Now,
What do you want to show the world? And so
now,
now that
now.
she's in that phase now, and I
Those are
love it.
the two sides of individuation is the deployment and discovery. What are the resources of the individual? She was born with resources, and that becomes deployed, and she must learn to become aware of them. That's half of the thing. The other half is, and what makes you a resource for the world? So now you may know what are the resources you're endowed with, but now you have to learn what makes you a resource for others.
Yes.
So whom and why and what are you going to serve? What is the direction of your life? Because finding out what you're going to serve for, what is your contribution, if you have a big one, a small one, doesn't matter. What is your contribution? That is what allows you to serve. And that gives direction to your life. That's the other half of individuation. The deployment and discovery of what makes you a resource for others. Which means, how are you going to integrate, consolidate, and use all the resources that you are made of, and use all that in order to satisfy, in order to sustain the way you are a resource for others.
Yeah.
That's called individuation. As you can see, it's a very powerful, a very important process.
Yes.
But the adults are not aware of that, because they themselves, they missed the train when it happened. They can pick it up again. But this process of individuation does not announce itself when it's happening. It just happens. I highly recommend you look at this, the biography, all the videos you have on YouTube. This guy, Jacob Collier.
Yes. I started looking at it. Yes.
Please watch it, because there are several interviews, one of the last 2 hours, where she shows the nitty gritty of his process. It's beautiful. Very beautiful. I think
Yeah,
your
I think
daughter
so.
could really, really, really enrich herself by watching that.
Yeah, she already knew who he was anyway. So
Okay, great. Okay, but
I
I'm
feel that we
talking.
learn so much from our kids. We learn
Yeah,
so much
of
from our
course.
kids, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sometimes if you're not in tune with that, then you could kind of brush it away. But since they were little, you learn they're direct messengers from God or universe or unified fields.
Well, I
Amazing.
encourage highly that if she watches certain videos, if she hasn't watched them, because they're very, very important. At least from my point of view, they're extremely
Okay.
important illustration of individuation as it happened to him, right there in front of your face. Okay, is it time now, Abraham?
We are
time, yes.
Okay. So, well, thanks for your ears.
Everyone have a wonderful day.
Ciao, ciao.